This is Jewish Spotlight, a weekly television program presented by Chabad Lubavitch of Long Island, featuring various aspects of modern Jewish life and Jewish culture. Now, here is your host, Rabbi Tuvia Teldin.
Shalom, and welcome to the Jewish Spotlight. I'm Rabbi Tuvia Teldin, director of Chabad Lubavitch here in Long Island. Tonight we have a show that I think all of you are going to be very interested in because it deals with issues in life that affect every single person out there. And especially the younger you are, I think the more important it is for you to stay and watch what we have to say tonight. Because life, as you well know, is a challenge. And one of those challenges is to find fulfillment and meaning in life. And people look far and wide in order to find that meaning. Some people think they can find it in money, some people in fame, some in power, some just in the simplicity of having an enjoyable, easy lifestyle. But the fact is, and our Torah teaches us that there are many, many deeper ways, and sometimes more successful ways, to find that meaning in life, which gives each and every single one of us the inner strength to be able to go through the day-to-day challenges that we all face. So today, we have with us a guest who has spread the teachings of Judaism, and specifically the teachings of the Lubavitcher Rebbe, about a meaningful life, and spread it throughout the world. We have with us today Rabbi Simon Jacobson, who is the author of Towards a Meaningful Life. And Rabbi Jacobson, it's a pleasure to have you on board today.
Pleasure is mine.
And we look forward to an interesting discussion.
Thank you.
First of all, before we start, can you tell us a little bit about what motivated you to write this book about the Rebbe's wisdom, and specifically to target that area of that wisdom which deals with the meaningful life?
Well, frankly, Judaism has gotten quite a bad rap. You see so much alienation and disillusionment, young Jews and older Jews, where the religion, the age-old tradition and heritage of Judaism doesn't speak to their hearts and souls in a relevant way, and that's why you find so many young people not going to the synagogues and temples of their parents, and often searching elsewhere, whether it's in Far Eastern disciplines and so on. And it was quite clear to me that it was not due to malicious reasons, as the Rebbe himself teaches, but rather because of ignorance and the way Judaism is being presented. And I think the most brilliant and powerful message of the Rebbe is to make Judaism, a 3,000-year-old tradition, relevant, accessible into contemporary language. So I felt compelled, simply by the numbers and by my experiences and my colleagues, and I'm sure yours as well, where you see such alienation, to really articulate the Jewish message in universal, relevant terms. Because the Hebrew language and its style is mostly inaccessible to someone that doesn't have background.
Right.
And the key is to be able to take those traditions and apply them to the issues of life today. Young people's struggles, men and women's struggles, whether it's issues about relationships or pain, or celebrating, or as you mentioned, meaning, finding deeper meaning in our daily existence.
Right. I'm constantly amazed how most people think of Judaism simply as a matter of chopped liver sculptures, or maybe a Hebrew school lesson, or weddings and bar mitzvahs and bat mitzvahs and so forth and so on, and you start to speak about Judaism in terms of something very relevant, and they're shocked, totally shocked that this is Judaism? I thought Judaism just deals with other issues that have to do with, quote-unquote, being religious.
Well, that's half the problem. Then there's the deeper problem where people are really angry and are even fearful of Judaism because it's being used in ways to intimidate them, dogmatic approach, fear, a punitive God, you know, that if you don't do this, which is so antithetical to Jewish approach, which is all based on love and embracing and a warm, sensitive approach. Even that's shocking to people, but and it's created a very deep apathy and resistance to really hear anything.
Let's go back a couple of years. You had the tremendous responsibility and also the merit to be one of the, what we call chozrim, one of the people who would literally sit by the Rebbe's feet while the Rebbe was addressing thousands of people, whether it be on the Sabbath, on the holidays, or during the week, in order to be able to repeat the Rebbe's words and write it down and make sure that it was properly transmitted for generations to come. Now, what was it that you took personally as the major message from those years that you sat with listening and soaking in the Rebbe's teachings and the Rebbe's wisdom? What was it that most impressed you and that you wanted to communicate in your book?
I would say it's captured in one line in my book on the chapter on birth. The book is structured around the cycles of life.
Right.
So before each chapter I cite one quote from the Rebbe that captures the essence of that concept. So in the chapter on birth, there's a line that says, birth is God saying that you matter. I think the single most important message, if you can sum it up in one line, and also what is so much lacking in society today, is that we really truly matter in an absolute and indispensable way. That we're essentially all like musical notes in a large composition, and you're needed on this earth. Because we live in a society that is so driven by arbitrary circumstantial forces. Usually our values measured by your buying power, your productivity, your looks, and many things that are very superficial, and most importantly, they're transient. They change.
Right.
And the Rebbe's most powerful message, which is really the Torah's message, is that no, you were created in a divine image, you have a unique contribution to make, and no one can replace you. And I think if people feel that, that infuses every activity, every choice you make with entirely different attitudes. Like if you wake up in the morning and you don't know that you're needed, so how much are you invested in your choices and your decisions? But if you know that no one can replace you, it changes the whole
picture. It's
picture.
very interesting that you mentioned that as being the central theme, because I must say that in reading the book, that you find that as you deal with, as you say, the different parts of the life cycle, that message is in fact infused in every single part of a person's life. The message being that not only that you mean and that you're important, but also that you have the ability, and of course the book provides the tools to be able to find that specific meaning in every experience in life. So it's not just a general type of feeling, well, I'm important and I mean something. It's really, how do I express that today, and what do I do about this type of experience or this stage of my life or that problem, this challenge, in order to be able to find that meaning and depth in my life and make my connection to my family, to God, to my fellow human being a deeper one and a more meaningful one. And that I found to be very interesting.
Well, I must share with you an experience around the book, which I feel, really was life-changing for me. Just one experience. But it really taught me to appreciate the Rebbe in an entirely different way, even though I grew up with him and I studied under his guidance and direction and worked for him doing these talks. This was a story in St. Louis. I spoke there. My book initially came out and was published. I went on a book tour and I spoke in different cities. I continued to do that. I was in St. Louis, and a woman wrote me a letter, a very powerful letter. She said she was ashamed to come over at the time, but this is what she wants to share with me. And briefly, she writes that she's a very successful executive, very well respected in her community, but the truth is, beneath the surface lies a woman in shreds, because she grew up in a very abusive household that abused her physically, emotionally, psychologically, and even beyond that. And basically, her life has been total disaster internally. She really feels every day she struggles against suicide. And in order to compensate for that lack of inner value, she says, what people like myself do, we become super productive and hyper successful. She said, it's really just a distraction. It doesn't really change anything, but it just keeps me busy. And she's given up hope. She's tried therapy, and relationships don't work. Intimacy doesn't work. And someone gave her Toward a Meaningful Life as a gift. And that one line jumped at her. She said she was just browsing through it. She's not an observant woman. And it struck a deep chord inside of her, that birth is God saying that you matter. And she read it again and again, and has read it over 500 times. This is what she's writing. And she says she'll read it the rest of her entire life, because what she realized, though she never met the Rebbe, was that despite what her parents told her, that she's an accident and just a source of misery, and despite what society tells you, that you're another statistic on someone's balance sheet, and your values as far as your buying power goes, or measured by other external things, she matters to the one that matters most, God. And the mere fact that she was born and exists is for her a vote of confidence that I am needed on this earth. Regardless of my mood, how I'm dressed, my age, my wrinkles, my money, all that.
It's a beautiful story.
But she concludes and says this, that what she needs to do now is to create bypass surgery, to bypass the infected arteries that her parents gave her when they abused her, and reconnect to that innocent moment of birth when God said, I want you here, and I need you here.
Interesting.
And she concludes, so thank you for giving me back my life. And it moved me to tears, obviously, and I was very, very haunted even by it. Because I suddenly started thinking to myself, this message, sometimes you need the eclipse of the sun to appreciate sunlight. The shadows of life, a person who did not think that she mattered, sometimes makes you think, I grew up in a relatively healthy home. but yet you think you matter. Of course I matter on a circumstantial level. We all matter. You know, our parents love us, our communities perhaps respect us. But the true question, and this is the thing that the Rebbe contributed, I believe, more than anything, at least to me and to many that I know, is if you were never born, would it make a difference to anyone? Because it wouldn't be a tragedy, no one would miss you. Once we're here, of course we try to make ourselves important. But the point is that the fact that you're born means that you have to leave this earth and contribute something in this life that no one else can do for you. And that, I think, is an extremely powerful message, especially in a society that's driven by commercialism and advertising, and our value is very arbitrary, even in our own eyes.
But what the Rebbe did, I think, was to take some of the basic precepts of Hasidic thought, precepts that go back, let's say, to the times of the Baal Shem Tov, and his talks about divine providence, and the talk about every single little thing in the world that happens has a deep meaning, and magnify that in a way that a human being feels their importance to the point where these quote-unquote concepts that are part of Torah teaching come alive, and they become part of a breathing, living human being who is able to integrate them into their life. And the fact is, there are so many people that are in the same situation. Let's say not this lady who had a terrible childhood. Let's say somebody who had a very, very wonderful childhood, and their parents provided them with a tremendous amount of things, and they were put on that road to success, which so many people have been put onto, and they succeeded. And then they get there, and they look around themselves, and they feel, okay, but what's inside? Who am I? What have I accomplished? What have I really been able to do? So a book like this, in which I've found in many cases, because I've sat with people with the book, and my wife has taught a class based on the book also, that these are people who find a meaning in the book and meaning in the Rebbe's teachings that they were not able to find anywhere in any college course that they took or anything else that they might have encountered. And it's a beautiful gift to be able to show a person those tools in life, to be able to let the flower grow and let that inner self, like you say, that godly spark, which the Rebbe so often wanted to draw out of us, and the Rebbe over so many years did everything possible to draw that godly spark out of this hidden state within us and bring it to a revealed position.
Well, it's important to point out that any great teacher in Jewish tradition, including the Rebbe, are not teaching anything original. This is a tradition that goes back to Sinai, and even preceding that. What a great Rebbe does is he's able to take those eternal truths that sometimes are submerged or obfuscated by the struggle of life, and articulate them and apply them to our generation. And our generation has its unique challenges.
Right.
And that's the power. It's not in so much in innovation and originality, but it's rather in almost the contrary, to strip it of all its originality and get back to the bare essence. Because when it comes down to it, most people, all people, are struggling with the same issues. They're struggling with dealing with children, with dealing with loss and trauma, with dealing with to live a wholesome, meaningful life. And that, I think, is that's in a sense the brilliance of it. There's a lot of people with many interesting, intriguing innovations, but those are called fads.
Right.
Whereas here you're dealing with something which is both steeped
an eternal truth,
in a long tradition, and it's applied in contemporary terms.
Definitely. Let me ask you also, in your travels around the country and perhaps around the world, where you've been speaking to various audiences about this, what do you find a common type of reaction, or what do you find is the point about the book which really hits people between the eyes on a regular basis?
Well, let me put it this way. I was traveling once to speak somewhere, and the host asked me, what are the top 2 favorite topics that everyone wants to hear about?
Okay.
So I said, from my experience, number 1 is relationships, love, sexuality, intimacy, and number 2 is pain and suffering. And he said to me, those aren't 2 topics, it's the same thing. That's how he saw it. So I think that...
Wait, you're going to have to explain that a little bit.
Well, for him, or for many people,
yes,
love is a double-edged sword.
Okay.
On one hand, it brings the greatest gratification, but it's also the source of greatest misery.
Right. Okay. Fine.
And disappointment. And many people have experienced both sides of it today.
Yes.
The beautiful side and also the other side of it, the ugly side, so to speak. So I think that traveling, as a matter of fact, what amazed me is that people are really similar everywhere. The differences are only perhaps in language and accent and foods, but when it comes down to the real essence of life, it's amazingly similar. And
That's why the Torah wisdom is able to be applicable to people in whatever environment, whatever situation in life they may find themselves.
In my case, with my book, which is really, as I said, they're really articulating truths that are not original at all, but trying to just capture it in a language that people can relate to. I found the element of the resonating truth, that people feel that they read it and it's like speaking to themselves. So many people tell me they read it before they go to sleep, and they find it very soothing. Particularly, actually, a few people have told me, quite a few, about how it's helped them in time of loss, death, and similar experiences. But I hear different reactions. Generally, I was pretty gratifying to hear how people have responded, and they read it again and again, because it's written in a way that's not, you don't have to read it from beginning to end.
Right.
You can really read selections, and interestingly, I wrote first the content of the book and then the stories. Well, many people tell me they read the stories and they say that content that you connect the stories with is pretty good. So sometimes you write one way and people take it another, and they're right, not you.
Well,
so
let me ask you a
learn
question.
from that.
Before we go on, let's take a particular topic, and maybe you can give us a little bit of an idea of what's in the book. Let's say, for instance, the topic of love in relationships. What does the Rebbe say about that? Can you give us a little synopsis?
Just, well, briefly, that there are two types of love. One love that's built on narcissism and need, another love which is built on transcendence. One is a conditional love and one is an unconditional one. What that means, namely, specifically, that means we all need love. We need it as children from our parents. We need the nurturing. We need the vote of confidence, the comfort, knowing that someone cares for us. But in that case, it's a need like any other need, except it's more sublime. It's not like food, but it's still something that nourishes you. Without it, we feel depleted.
Right.
And then as we grow older, love, a good love, a romantic love, a love of marriage, is also a necessity that helps a person function, helps a person feel complete. It, you have a place to come home to after a harsh day at work on the outside difficult world. That's what it's meant to be. But that's a very, let's call it the first dimension of love. The deeper love, which is really, what really is the most satisfying one of all, is a transcendent love. It's not just that you're getting something because you need it, like food, drink, or oxygen, but it's love that teaches you that you can reach something that's greater than yourself. And that's why often when couples come to me and they talk to me about their issues, and they say, well, the therapists, try to negotiate their needs. This one, I'll stop squeezing the toothpaste from the middle of the tube if you take out the garbage, that type of thing.
Right.
But that's only basically damage control. It's like creating to navigate in a minefield. And I always ask anyone, I say, well, you tell me about your needs, what the Judaism and the Torah would ask, and the Rebbe would ask, is what are you giving to the relationship? We all talk about what we want to take from it and get from it, but what are you giving to it? And this second love, which is a much higher love, is the understanding and appreciation that it's not just how much I get, what needs are satisfied, but I get something from a love. What I get is I can learn to rise above my own self. That sacrifice, that ability to know that a mother, for example, stays up all night because when a child is not well, God forbid, is not because it's out of duty or because she signed a contract, is because that's called real love. It means even when it's uncomfortable.
Right.
And that type of love is what makes you much greater than you have ever been. And in a true loving relationship, in a healthy marriage, from a Jewish perspective, it's not just that two people are getting, some type of mutual reciprocity, like it's a business deal. You get something, I get something, but they both learn to grow greater than each of them, because they're bound together by a vision and a objective that is greater than the two. That's why in Judaism you find the Torah says, that's why we have a canopy, a chuppah, a canopy by a wedding ceremony, which is in a sense a symbol of God, that you need three partners in a loving relationship. The man, the woman, and God. You need something that is greater than the sum of the parts, something that's more than each individual. And that dimension of love is not really taught in our schools. We're taught a lot about the need we have, but the transcendence of it.
This is a key issue, and I think this is something that I find in my work is something that really touches people in a very unique way. And when you emphasize the transcendent aspect, and you mention the soul to a lot of people, first of all, there are many people who are Jews who don't even understand or know that Judaism believes in the soul. And when you connect a person to the neshama, and of course throughout the book there is mention from the Rebbe about the importance of connecting to the soul, or being aware of that dimension of your life, and it helps to, it's not an external belief, it's a matter of bringing something from inside that's within you and bringing it more to the surface. And I think that's a beautiful gift that a person could get from the book and from just learning more what the Rebbe's teachings are, and of course in terms of love as well, to be able to connect to your spouse or connect to your loved one, whether it be family or friends, and just on that level is a dimension that most people are not aware of. Before we go on though, Rabbi Jacobson, I want to make available your phone number, because I know you have a lot of things that you do and a lot of things you're involved in. You're of course the director of Vada Nachas HaTamimim, which helps to distribute and to get the word out from the Rebbe's teachings on a weekly basis. I believe you have a weekly type of publication. If you could just give us your phone number, that way we'll be able to have anybody get in touch with you if they're interested in following up in any way.
What we do, we offer more material because there's been a great demand based on the book. So what we set up was an 800 number, an 803 number, meaning 803 MEANING. That's 363-2646.
By dialing the number, they'll automatically get meaning in their life.
I wish it was so. Even by setting up the number, you don't get automatic meaning. But everything takes some effort. But anyone calling that number, 800-363-2646, will make available more material and more information, as well as an email address, I should add.
Okay, what is that?
Wisdom Reb, based on the book Wisdom Reb. That's at AOL.com.
Okay. All right, fine. So anybody out there who wants to follow up and get a little more information is welcome to do so. Tell me, with youth, of course that's an issue that the Rebbe was always very concerned about. What do you write concerning the Rebbe's advice to parents out there who are having troubles getting their youth on board? And by on board I mean having a good moral value system, being children who, let's say, believe in God, children who can really continue in a way that the parents can feel that they've made a contribution to this world by giving the child all the gifts they need.
Well, as you put it accurately, how we are as young people, that's what shapes us as being older people. As the Rebbe cites very often the verse in the Proverbs, as you educate your young, that's how they will be as they grow older. Unfortunately, sometimes we become adults, and we can't turn the clock back. But so it's critical, and that's why there's so much emphasis put on how the seed develops, so to speak, the seed, the sapling, before it grows into a mighty tree. I think you can sum up the Rebbe's approach to youth with his message about the rebellion of young people. Because one of the most outstanding qualities of young people is their rebellion, where they begin to rebel against the system, against the establishment. And the Rebbe said a fascinating thing. He said that many people see rebellion as an unhealthy thing, almost a crime. The Rebbe said the Rebbe says the rebellion in young people is really the fire in their belly, the voice of their soul that refuses to conform to the status quo and wants to change the world, but is frustrated because it doesn't know how to. So adults would do well to help channel, with their seasoning and their experience and their knowledge, to help channel those energies into a spiritual revolution in this world.
Great. I want to ask you another point also, because we don't have too much time, but I do want to get to a couple other points. Number one, one thing I find also when people read the book is they get such an eye-opener as far as realizing who the Rebbe is. And this is just, of course, a little bit of a taste of the Rebbe's tremendous gift to the world, because in terms of the wisdom, the inspiration that the Rebbe gave, the tremendous leadership that the Rebbe provides for the world is, of course, without measurement and without comparison in the Jewish world. But I find that the Rebbe's message there really gives people an idea of the Rebbe being a person, a leader, a rabbi who leads on a scale and in a way that nobody could possibly have imagined a Hasidic Rebbe doing. Of course, one of the Rebbe's broadest campaigns was about bringing the world to a state of perfection, of trying to bring the world to a point where we would have the coming of Mashiach, the coming of that era in time when, of course, the prophets talked about that there would be love, there would be no more evil, there would be no more of the type of jealousy and the type of conflict that goes on. As we close, can you maybe say a couple of comments in terms of what the Rebbe said about it? I'm not sure if you were saying anything about that in the book itself, but if you could just please comment on that.
Well, as you said, the book is only the tip of the iceberg. The Rebbe, as a powerful, brilliant teacher, produced hundreds of thousands of pages of material. But in essence, as we mentioned earlier, it all comes down to certain truths. And number one is that each of us matters absolutely, and our actions make a difference. And we have a destination we're going to reach. It's not just you're working, trying to be a virtuous and good person, and then it dies with you, God forbid, but it's eternal. The seeds you plant are like building blocks that build up to a great edifice. And essentially that is the faith, Jewish faith, that a Mashiach will come and a world will be a better world. But the interesting thing is that from a Jewish point of view, it's not just an event, it's a process.
Right.
That each of us contributes to that process. That means every move we make, every choice we make,
Right.
from every detail, all builds up to a larger picture.
Okay.
And by doing that, the Rebbe motivated, I believe, a generation to usher in
right.
an age of that nature.
Rabbi Jacobson, it's a beautiful way of putting it. I want to thank you very much, and I appreciate your being with us today. We have now something we've been doing on a regular basis, that is the letters that we have from various viewers, and I'd like to just read a letter and give a quick answer to this question. Dear Rabbi Teldon, I catch your show every once in a while and enjoy it very much. I notice you're starting to take questions, and I'd like to ask you one that's been bugging me for a long time. I understand people who want to keep kosher, but why do you need to have a kosher label on drinks, saran wrap, dishwasher soap, dried nuts, and all types of food that are kosher anyway? Thank you, from Jack Belstein. Thank you, Jack, for your question. We don't have too much time to answer, but I want to tell you that the kosher process today is a very complicated process. And it involves many different chemicals and different things that are used in very, very complex types of procedures that go on in food establishments today. And it's not just a matter of making a nice piece of saran wrap or putting a couple of dried nuts into a can. There are a lot of chemicals and a lot of different materials that are being used today that need to be checked out by rabbinical supervision. And this is why there's supervision for all types of different things, from Coke to anything you can imagine that could possibly involve that type of mixture. If you take a banana off the shelf, you don't need any rabbinical supervision. But as soon as there's a human element of mixture of foods in a food processing plant, then you need supervision. I hope that answers your question. And now I want to get to a little bit more. If you have any questions at all, questions that might concern Rabbi Jacobson's points or what we talked about tonight or anything else that might be of interest to you, there are Chabad centers throughout Long Island. We have our major Chabad center, the center at 58 Comac Road, and that's in Comac, New York, 11725. Our number is 462-7383. You can feel free, of course, also to write any letters to the rabbi or any other points you might have that you'd like to address at any time. In addition, of course, we have our website, which is www.chabadli.org. And in addition, of course, we have our superphone, which is 76 Super. You can call any time for a computer-driven menu, which will give you an idea of everything that you want, a Dial a Jewish Story, something for the kids, or whatever it might be. Meantime, I want to thank Rabbi Jacobson very much again for being with us. It's been a pleasure.
Thank
and
you.
I hope that you'll be back with us sometime again. You should have continued success in giving people that sense of meaning, because everybody here knows that that's a tremendous gift. To have that sense of meaning in life is something that you cannot pay $1 million to buy. It's something that has to come from within, and Torah and Judaism and the Rebbe's teachings, Rabbi Jacobson's book, help to provide the tools, because we all need tools. We didn't go to college to learn these tools. We need the tools to learn how to have a meaningful life. Don't fool yourself. Go out there, get the book, learn more about Judaism, contact your Chabad rabbi, learn about the inner, more spiritual dimension of Judaism, and have a good week. We'll see you at the same time, same place. Shalom.